Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. This is my channel, Sarah Likes to Read. In today's video, we are going to take a look at what I plan to read for the 2026 rFantasy Bingo Challenge. Now, I have done this bingo challenge in the past. I didn't really do it for 2025, mostly because the prompts were a little bit challenging in my opinion, and so I just kind of put it behind me. But when I saw the prompts for the 2026 bingo challenge, I was really excited, and so I decided that I am going to attempt to fill all of the squares on the bingo board this year. Now, if you don't know what rFantasy Bingo is, I am going to put the link to the bingo board and information down below. But basically, it is a fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction bingo challenge that happens every year from that starts April 1st and goes through March 31st. So you have a year to fulfill all of the prompts. Let's see, some of the other things that you have to know. You can only use one author or an author one time. So you cannot use the same author for more than one prompt unless the prompt specifically says that you can. And you can only use one book per prompt, so you cannot double up on prompts with your books. One reread is allowed, and you are allowed one swap, which means that if there is a square on the bingo board that you don't like or you don't think that you were able to fulfill, you can go back to any of the past bingo boards and choose a prompt to replace it, except for like ones that are already on the board for the current year. So with all of that being said, let's take a look. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go row by row, and just briefly talk about each book that I plan to read for each prompt. So let's start with row 1. And I have my computer over here to the side, so I will be glancing over to read the prompts. So I do apologize for that. All right, starting with row 1, the first square is to read a book with a trans or non-binary protagonist. And for that, I plan to read Human Rights by Juno Dawson. This is the final book in the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series. So I am glad to read this as well as to finish out this series. But there is a trans character that is in this series, but I'm not going to go much into detail because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read the series yet. For the next square is judge a book by its title, and it says that to read a book based on the title. This can be a title so epic you just had to pick it up, or so weird and off-putting that you needed to know why it was called this. And so I had a really hard time like trying to think like what really kind of title would fit this prompt. And so I had to kind of stop myself and say, you're making this harder than it needs to be, as I tend to do with things, and just kind of look through my shelves at all of the titles that I have physically and see if any of those titles really kind of jumped out at me. And I've decided to go with Hamajang Luck, and hopefully I'm saying that correctly. This is by Makana Yamoto. I got this out of an Illumicrate box a couple years ago, and I just have never read it. And so I'm picking this one just because this title does seem interesting to me. And all I know about it is that it says Hamajang, or however you pronounce it, is in a disorderly or chaotic state, messed up, chiefly in predictive use, especially in all hamajang. And it is borrowing from Hawaiian Pidgin, and this comes from the Oxford English Dictionary. That was just kind of reading the little bit of the synopsis there. And so that is a title that just kind of screams at me because it's interesting. I've never heard of that word before, and so I'm excited to give this one a try. For the third square on the first row is to read a translated work. Now, this is not one that I am fully confident that I will fulfill. I do have a book that I picked out for it, but I'm not one to usually read translated books. And so if I get to it within by March 31st, then I do. If not, maybe I can use that as my swap. But there are a few different books that could possibly um, maybe get swapped out. So, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. So the book that I picked to fulfill this prompt is the second book in the series that starts with Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And I'll pop the cover up here. But the second book is called Tales from the Cafe. And this is by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And I apologize if I'm saying that name incorrectly. But I did read Before the Coffee Gets Cold a couple years ago, and it was okay. It was, something that I just kind of had on audiobook while I was taking a walk one day, and it was cute. I wanted to see what the big hype was about it, and it was, a sweet little read, but it wasn't a series that I really planned to continue. So like I said, if I, don't get to that before time runs out, I might try to swap it with a different bingo prompt from a previous year. For the fourth square in the first row is to read a small press or self-published book. And the book that I have chosen for this is a book that was indie published and is going to be traditionally published. And it does say that if I read the book before it becomes traditionally published, then it is fine, it counts. And so for that, I decided to go with Kissed by the Gods by Katie Rogan. I picked this book up when I met her at Villains and Vixens, and I got a couple of prints that I got with it, and I got the book is signed by her, and I am actually planning to buddy read this with a few friends in May, which is before the book gets traditionally published. So this will count for that prompt if I do finish it before it publishes. I want to say it doesn't publish until the summer, so I think I should be okay. And then finally, for the last square on the first row is Unusual Transportation. And so basically, it is a book that has unusual transportation that is not common to the genre. So, like dragons, reading a dragon riders in a fantasy book would not count for this. And the book that I picked because it did specifically name a book in this series, the mode of transportation that they use. And at the time I was, when the Bingo Board came out, I was actually reading this book at the time, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm just going to go ahead and use that." And that is The Undercutting of Rosie and Adam. This is the last book in the Undertaking of Heart and Mercy series by Megan Bannon. So I have already fulfilled this square because I have finished this one already. And the mode of transportation that is unusual is that they ride what are called aqueduct or aqua autoducks, and which is, I guess, kind of like their cars, but I don't know. It's something that was created for this book series. And so it said, and since it mentioned that series by name, I decided to go ahead and use that one, especially since I was already reading it. And so those are the books for row one. Now let's take a look at row two. But before we get started on the books that I picked for row two, I did realize that I forgot to mention that there is a hard mode for each bingo prompt. And I decided that I am not going to really try to hit the hard mode for each prompt because I'm kind of putting a challenge on myself where I am trying to use as many books that I physically own to fulfill the prompts. And I felt like adding on to the hard mode was going to limit a lot of the choices that I was able to make. So I did want to point that out that my own personal hard mode is to try to make it a book that is already on my shelves to fulfill the prompt. Naturally, there are a few that I don't physically own yet, but I have them pre-ordered, so they are coming. And then there are those harder um, squares that I mentioned earlier that were kind of outside really of my own comfort zone. And so I plan to utilize my library where I can to get my hands on those books if I read them. All right, so all that aside, let's take a look at row two. So the first square for row two is called the afterlife. And this says the story deals with the realm of the dead. This could be communicating with the dead, spirits transferring over, or being set in the afterlife itself. And for that prompt, I decided to choose Immortal Consequences by Ivy Marie. I've had this book on several TBRs. This was one that I actually had hoped to get to in March for Realmathon because it has a school setting. The team I was on, like the bonus prompt was school setting, and this was one of the ones that I had pulled for that and just never got to it. And the to my understanding, it is a school setting that is kind of set in like purgatory, which I think is really interesting. So I am excited to get to this one for the afterlife prompt. The next square is Game Changer, and it says the story features a game or competition. And this is another book that I have put on several TBRs, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, which I'm kind of glad that I haven't because now I can use it for this year's bingo, and that is Dungeon Crawler Carl. And because the whole premise of this series is like a video game, like he gets sucked into like a video game type setting where he has to like survive all of the levels. I don't know a whole lot about it except for I know that everybody that's read it has loved it, and I feel like I am going to also. And so I need to just stop dragging my feet and finally just dive into this book. Next is A Vacation Spot. And so this one is another one of those like up to the reader, highly subjective, kind of like the title, the interesting title prompt that we saw in row one. And it says the story takes place somewhere you'd want to visit, either fictional or non-fictional. This is subjective as everyone has different tastes. And so for this one, I am going to read Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. This is the sequel to the House on the Cerulean Sea, which I loved when I read it a few years ago. And I just thought that, this was a really fun another school setting book, but just even like the town that the characters visited in the House on the Cerulean Sea seemed like a really nice place to be. And, just I think it is really neat to be somewhere that does overlook the ocean. And so that is to me like one of my ideal vacation spots is having like an ocean view. And so that's what I'm going to read for that prompt. Um, the next one is what a prompt that is on the bingo board every single year, and it is 5 short stories. So this is one of the prompts where you can read from the same author. Like, for example, if you're reading a short story collection, it's okay if all of the short stories are written by that same author. And so for this one, I think I am going to go with the it's what's it called? Sorry. The Scared Sexy Amazon short story collection that came out like around Halloween time last year. And it has stories written by like Allie Hazelwood, Christina Lauren, Ruby Dixon, just to name a few. And they are like paranormal romance short stories. There's 6 actually in that collection. So I'll probably just go ahead and read all 6 to meet the prompt, but I only need to read 5 of them to fulfill that prompt. And those I wish I could get physically. I always wish that they would just physically bind up all of the stories each time they come out with a collection, because I've really enjoyed them all. I wish that Amazon would bundle them up and let us buy them. But I am going to read those on Kindle Unlimited with the audio, which I can get through Audible by having those books downloaded to my Kindle. And the last book on row 2 is to read a book with an older protagonist. And the character has to be at least 50 years old to meet this prompt. And so for this one, I'm putting in Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. This is the last book in the Greenbone saga. She's a chunky one, and I've heard that my heart will break in this, and so I'm a little bit terrified to read it, and so I just need to put my big girl pants on and just go ahead and read this. And the reason why I am putting this one on is because, to my understanding, this particular book spans like 20 years in this family's life, and I did kind of see in the wiki page that some of the characters that have been in like the first 2 books are going to be over 50 by the end of the book. Now, how long they'll be over 50 in this book, I do not know. And so when I do finish it, if I feel like they were not like 50 or older long enough, I might substitute in What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I just finished that book, and one of the characters did say that she was like over 60 years old. So if I feel like this one doesn't really fulfill the prompt, then I will sub in that one, because it is one that I've already read. So that square could be completed if I need it to be. And so those are the books that I plan to read for row 2. All right, let's take a look at row 3. So the first square on row 3 is called Duology Part 1. And so the prompt is to read the first book in a duology. And so I am going to read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I am excited to read this one. I've heard nothing but good things about this book. And it's another one that I just keep putting off because I'm a little intimidated by it, because like I said, it's been so highly received by so many, and I'm afraid that it's not going to live up to the hype, which has kind of been happening to me a lot lately. So I am a little bit nervous about reading this one. But I am also really excited because I did enjoy her other duology that she wrote, The Shepherd's King. I think that's what it's called. It's The One Dark Window. And I really enjoyed both books in that duology. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. The second square on this row is another square that does appear every single year on the bingo board, and that is to read an rFantasy book club or read along book. Now, I don't usually participate in the book clubs or the read alongs, but I do from time, every year when I'm looking at this, obviously, I will go through. They do keep like a list of all of the books that they have chosen over the years. And so for this year, I am going with City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. And I'm actually about, I'd say like maybe 55 or so percent in, and I'm really enjoying it. And this is another book that kind of intimidated me because of the chunkiness of it, but I'm having a really good time with it. And so I'm really glad that I decided to go with this one, because there were quite a few books that I own that were on the list, but I am also reading this one right now because it is an Aurelium prompt, a magical readathon prompt that I am reading for April. And so I'm, knocking out two birds with one stone, which I, tend to try to do. Uh, works smarter, not harder, like they say. Um, the third square in row 3 is to read a book that is published in 2026. And so for that, I am going with the Ballad of Fallen Dragons. This is the second book in the When the Moon Hatched series, which I am so, so, so excited to read. I absolutely loved When the Moon Hatched when I read it year before last. And like that book still lives rent free in my head, but I am going to have to reread When the Moon Hatched before this one comes out next month, and I'm so excited. I have the Fairy Loot edition of When the Moon Hatched, and I did pre-order the Fairy Loot edition of this one, but I am going to probably read it from my library before my Fairy Loot edition comes in. So it will just be a trophy sitting on my shelf until I guess the next book comes out and I have to reread it again. If the series is continuing, I don't even know if it is, but I'm so excited for it. And that one was like the easiest, I think, square to fill, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, oop, I know what I'm reading. So that's what I'm going to read for published in 2026. The next square is Explorers and Rangers. It says the story features an explorer, a character who travels to and investigates an unfamiliar region, or a ranger, a wilderness or forest oriented warrior frequently specializing in things like stealth, bows, tracking, and other hunting related skills. And so for this one, I am going with a newer book that I have received. This one I think was just in the most recent, like March, I guess, because I don't think I've gotten the April books yet. Fairy Loot box. I'm not sure which one because I get all of them. Let's see, what does the card say? This came in the March Adult Fantasy box. It's The Last Starborn Seer by Venetia Constantine. It says, the last of a ruined bloodline, she's shunned for her volatile starborn magic, which grants her prophetic visions but is slowly corrupting her mind. Branded a pariah, Leilani is blamed for the sickening, a wasting curse that fractured the realms of Aurelia and plunged them into war. When her dying mother's health deteriorates and a forced marriage threatens her future, Leilani seizes the chance to reclaim her fate. A prophecy speaks of an ancient relic that could end the sickening, and she's determined to find it. To retrieve the scepter, she must survive the deadly climb to the Astral Mountain, forge alliances with enemies, outwit rebel forces, and navigate her own treacherous feeling for a rival envoy, which grow under the watchful eye of her betrothed. Hunted by a vengeful specter and haunted by her magic, Leilani must decide what she's willing to sacrifice in the name of redemption before her powers consume her. So that seems really interesting, and it looks like it's going to have like a snowy setting. Just looking at the end pages. And so, yeah, that's what I'm deciding to read for that square, because she does have to like journey, like she's going on a quest through this, through, the elements and everything. And so for the last square on this row is duology part 2. And this is actually, it does say that you are allowed to read the same author you use for duology part 1. And so I am kind of putting all my money on the fact that I am going to love The Night and the Moth. And so I am putting in the second book in that duology, that's set to come out later this year, sequel to The Night and the Moth. It is a duology, I did check. And but if I should happen to not want to continue after reading The Night and the Moth, I do have a few other duologies that I do need to finish that I can put into this spot if I need it. But like I said, I'm putting my money on it. I'm going to love both books, and you heard it here first. And so those are the books that I plan to read for row 3. Okay, I had to take a little bit of a break because I was starting to lose steam um, as we were coming to the end of the last row that I was talking about, and I had to pull my hair back off my face because it was driving me nuts. But I had some dinner and I'm feeling a little bit better, so let's dive back into the bingo board and let's talk about row 4. So the first square in row 4 is one word title, and that is pretty self-explanatory. And so for that, I went with Cold Wire by Chloe Gong. I actually just finished reading this book, so I have completed the square. And this was the first book that I read by Chloe Gong, but I really enjoyed it. It was dealing with like AI and virtual reality, and kind of got a little bit confusing, but it was a really good time. And I saw that this was actually the first book in a trilogy, so I cannot wait to read the next book in that series. Square 2 is a non-human protagonist. I decided for this square, I am going to read Brigands and Bread Knives, which is the latest book that just came out maybe last year, towards the end of last year. I'm not exactly sure, but it is the latest installment in the Legends and Lattes series by Travis Baldree. I don't own this book yet, but I am, because I wanted to get it in paperback, since the other books in the series I have are paperback. And so I have it pre-ordered to come. And so I will be reading this one through my library, either that or I'll just wait until my paperback copy comes in. And I felt like this was a great one to do because I don't believe there are any human characters in this book. So I am just really excited to continue on with the series because I have really loved the first 2 books, and I just feel like I'm going to love this one too. The characters are so lovable in these books. For the next square is to read a middle grade book. Now, I don't typically read middle grade books, and so this one is another possible one that I might end up swapping out if I just don't get to this book by the time the bingo is over. And so I am going with the second book in the Trials of Morrigan Crow series. I think the series might be Nevermore, but book 2 is called Wanderlust. And I read the first book a few years ago and thought it was okay. It was like a silly, goofy time, but not really, didn't really leave me thinking like, oh, I want to continue in this series. And so the only reason why I picked it was because I needed a middle grade and I didn't want to start a new series or anything. And so I will most likely check this one out from the library and read it. And if I don't, I will just swap it for a different prompt from another bingo. Next up, we have First Contact, and this says that the story prominently features interspecies or interracial meeting for the first time. And so for this prompt, I chose The Courting of Bristol Keats. This is by Mary E. Pearson. This was an Owl Crate. I got this out of Owl Crate a few years ago. And I believe this one is also a duology. So if I end up needing to pick a second book in a duology and I like this one, I could just pick the second book. But this book will fulfill this prompt because it does say that she gets a letter from her aunt that she never knew that she had. Like, this is after her parents pass away, and she gets a letter from an aunt that she never knew that she had, saying that, she promises to help her. And so she like kind of reluctantly agrees, and it says she discovers that everything she thought she knew about her family is a lie. um and let's see, desperate to save her father, who might not have demised the way that she thought, Bristol journeys to a land of gods and fae and monsters. Pulled into a dangerous world of magic and intrigue, she makes a deadly bargain with a fae leader. And so it really seems like maybe she didn't know that there's, that fae and, monsters and everything exist, and learn and discovers that they do. I'm sorry, this book is heavy and it's sliding out of my hands. And so, yeah, I think that this one will be an interesting pick. I don't really hear a lot of people talking about this book, and so I am curious to see what it is all about. And for the last square on this row is to read a murder mystery. It says the main plot of the story focuses on solving a murder. And so I have another book that's been on my shelf for a long time. This is A Dark and Drowning Tide by Allison Saft. This does say that it is a murder mystery. And that's all that I really know about it. It says that our main character is a folklorist with a quick temper and even quicker wit. And I guess along the way she does get involved into having to solve a murder, but I don't really know anything else about it. I've heard mixed things about this, and so I am just hoping that I enjoy it. But if it doesn't work for me, I do have a few other murder mystery, like fantasy murder mystery books that are on my radar that I can maybe, put in its place. But like I said, I am wanting to prioritize books that I own, and I own this one and need to read it. So that is what I have on for that square at this time. And that is all of the books that I plan to read for row 4. So let's buckle in and see what the last row has in store for me. Okay, so for the last row of the bingo board, the first square is called Cat Squasher. And basically, all that it is that you have to pick a book that is at least 500 pages long. And I had so many books to choose from, like too many books to choose from, I think, that this could have been a really hard prompt. But I decided to go with The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This one is just over 500 pages. I think it's like around 550 pages long. Let's see, 500 59 pages long. And so this just, meets the criteria. And the reason why I put this one on is because I am planning to read this before April is over, because I did have a reading challenge prompt that to read a book that has a character who works in a library. And it says let's see, It doesn't say it on the back, but on a different synopsis, maybe on Goodreads or on Storygraph, it did say that the girl character works in a library or is training to work in a library. And so that is why I put this one on. This is one that I, bought not too long ago. I bought it in my birthday haul, based on just the reviews of some booktubers that I have seen that said that this is a good series, and that Mark Lawrence, I've heard that a lot of his series are well received. So this is going to go in for Cat Squasher. The second square is Feast Your Eyes on This. And so for that, I am going to read The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. I don't own this book yet because it's another one that I pre-ordered that I'm waiting for the paperback to come out, just because I have the first book in the series in paperback. But I didn't say what this prompt was about, so sorry. So Feast Your Eyes on This. It has to have food or a meal that is significant to the story's plot. And I chose this one because in the synopsis, it does talk about the character eating honey cakes. And so I feel like that is probably something that is going to be featured prominently in the story if it's on, mentioned a couple of times on the synopsis of the book. Next up, we have another one that is a little bit hard for me, because it's not something that I was, ever had the intention of reading. And that is to read a book that is published in the 1970s. And so this is, like I said, I don't tend to read books that are older. I like to try to read more current books. However, when I was going through like the Storygraph challenge and like looking to see what other people were picking for it, that I came across The Princess Bride, which I have never read. I have seen the movie and I really like the movie. And so I thought, hey, why not read the book and see how they compare? And so this one I'm going to try to get at my library and see how I like it. Um, Next up, we have Politics and Court Intrigue. Politics are central to the story's plot. This covers everything from royalty, elections, and wars to smaller local politics. Um, and so for this one, I decided to go with A Kiss of Iron by Claire Sager. This is the first book in the Court of Tenebris series. And I do know that it is like has a lot of like the court intrigue. And so I am excited to start this series. I've heard good things about it. The only book of hers that I've read so far is her newest release, King of Ravens, and I really enjoyed her writing in that. So I feel like I am going to enjoy this one as well. And then finally, the last square on the board is to read a book that is written by a person of color. And so for that, I decided to go with Lore of the Tides. This is the second book in the duology that has Lore of the Wilds, by Annalise Sabrana. So this is like another second book in the duology. So if I need like a book two, I can, swap this one out there and pick up another part two, second book in the duology. But yeah, I am excited to read this one. This is really pretty, the Fairy Loot edition that I got to match the Fairy Loot edition of the first one. And I don't really remember a whole lot about the first book. And so I'm probably going to have to read like a recap before I start this one. But I think that the cover is just absolutely beautiful. And so I am excited to read this one. So that rounds up the 2026 Bingo TBR, our fantasy Bingo TBR, of all the books that I plan to read. I feel like I did a really good job of choosing as the books that I already own physically or will be owning physically by the end of this year. And so I really hope that I can stick with the bingo, and because that will knock out a lot of my physical TBR. Thank you so much for watching my video today. And if you made it to the end of the video, comment down below to let me know if you are participating in our fantasy bingo and what prompt you thought was the hardest one to fill or to choose a book for that TBR. But if you don't feel like you have anything to say, but just want to let me know that you were here, you can leave me a jellyfish or a mushroom emoji. I don't know if there are either, but there are jellyfish and mushrooms on the back cover of my book. And so if there are a jellyfish or a mushroom emoji, you can leave that, but if not, leave me a fish, because there's a teeny tiny little fish on the front cover too. But thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.